When his uncle, the Emperor Maximilian, died, Aker's financial circumstances altered radically. That's the long and the short of it, because Aker had hardly known his distant relative, a man who anyway preferred stories about unbounded material and martial success to the more difficult work offered up by the kind of abstruse though accurate social commentary that Aker gave his time to reading. The old man really loved war stories and stories about kings, but he went quietly in the end, his mortal spark engulfed by the smothering blank space that inhabits time beyond the end of earthly life, having breathed his last in a room inside a sumptuous and exclusive nursing home in Bohemia, located next to a forest of ancient oaks, spruce, and linden. To access his inheritance, Aker was obliged to visit the offices of an expensive lawyer. He caught the train to the central district and walked through a crowd of lunchtime refugees, those thousands of busy people who leave their desks daily to seek out sustenance and diversion within the shabby confines of the big city. Aker was suspicious of the musty lobby's worn charms, but found the lawyer's office was clean and well kept. The transaction took several hours to complete. When he passed through the lobby on his way out of the building, Aker began to plan his future. In Rio de Janeiro, Aker found a reasonably priced apartment overlooking the slums, but that was located close to the beach. He had decided to make his base in the Brazilian city because of the low cost of living and because this was a part of the world that he had never before visited. Brazil's allure was Aker's temporary stimulant, and he spent a few months getting acquainted with the neighborhood, which reminded him of Tokyo, a similarly grimy and unwelcoming metropolis. While Aker dreamed of uncovering Gothic secrets, he found only an assortment of small and underfunded museums. He found occasion to become familiar with various women during his visits to these establishments, and these rencontres allayed his habitual loneliness and isolation that was sharpened by his unfamiliar surroundings. Often he would sit on the balcony overlooking the slums, drinking some light refreshment prepared by his maid, and without thinking twice would dress hurriedly and venture out into the city, a guidebook in his coat pocket. But Aker yearned to discover things. He wanted a life of fulfillment and found that the mere possession of billions in a stable world currency was an inadequate proxy for the rewards of individual achievement. He had chosen a plain apartment in a plain city, but still extraordinary things did not eventuate. One day, as he was sitting in a cafe on one of the city's main streets, surrounded by hungry refugees from the nearby office towers, Aker began to understand his real situation, and this realization allowed him to begin planning a suitable response to his diurnal ennui. He noticed how the people around him moved, with a kind of simple elegance, and he compared this mechanical logic with his own dissatisfaction. He felt as though he were ill with an incurable disease. This thought led to a moment of panic, because it seemed to Aker that he would never be able to move with the simplicity exhibited by the regular people living in the world. With exasperation he knew that there was no place he could go to escape this feeling. He was trapped inside his own cranial appurtenance, and there was no way easily to escape from this invisible trap. In his mild despair, Aker improvised and found a girlfriend to occupy the emptiness created by an excess of leisure, but this proved an illusion because maintaining the relationship, no matter how intelligent and charming Elsa was, prevented him from spending as much time dreaming as he had planned to do. Elsa gave him a kind of fulfillment, but Aker sought a less busy, more focused sort of satisfaction. Luckily, the city provided enough sensual distraction that he did not in fact need a relationship at all, and so he decided to call it off. Elsa cried. Aker went back to his balcony, overlooking the slums, and thought about Paris and Baudelaire. Like his uncle, Aker tended to mistake fame for real value. Aker wondered why the mechanical elegance of the people he saw in the street going about their daily lives ranked second in his mind to the achievements of people whose work he admired. He tried to reconcile the normal with the extraordinary and came to the conclusion that the problem was within himself. Because he was sick, he was unable to find beauty in the routine world. And so Aker did what anyone else in this situation would do. He tried to cure himself by practicing a craft. Aker went back to Tokyo, a place he thought he would never again visit, and bought an apartment in which he could spend time making pottery and from where he could easily access the knowledge of that craft that was stored within the minds of the world's most accomplished potters. He spent 3 years acquiring the rudiments of the craft and established a small amount of renown in the pottery community in Tokyo, as the foreigner who liked teacups. But he didn't marry. His experience in Rio de Janeiro had taught him the virtues of emotional freedom. When Aker finally returned home to Australia, he chose a place to live that would give him enough freedom so that he could exist with his sickness and remain undisturbed by the threatening elegance of the crowd. So he bought a smallish property in the New England region of New South Wales. Up in the high country, he built a studio so that he could continue making pottery, with a kiln, a workroom, and a storage room for his clays and pigments. But he never forgot how he discovered the beauty of unsophisticated human activity, the glistening pavements of the streets in the world's largest metropolis, and the exquisite perfume of Elsa's dark hair.